Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a good rest after our dinner last night and also had a chance to do some more informal networking last night back at the hotel. It's great to see everyone here so bright and early and awake, and hopefully those with jet lag will get over it before they get on the plane to go home. So just a couple of little updates. So yesterday after lunch, apparently we had 175 unique visitors watching the live stream, which is very exciting. We also had folks looking at the blog from quite literally all over the world. I can sort of read the list of countries maybe at the next break if you like, but it's pretty much everywhere, like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and places where we're not even doing work were checking out the blog yesterday. And Liz Losh up here has been diligently, dutifully live blogging, and you'll see some of her posts up now about all of yesterday's sessions if you'd like a review and some additional insight from her own expertise, as well as some of the resources that she's pulling into those blog posts that speak to some of our conferences in years past, as well as some of our outputs that are happening right now. One little note, we will be all assembling at 12:30 for a big group picture, okay? So I don't quite know how that's gonna happen, but we're just gonna look at Jenny and she's gonna tell us what to do. So 12:30 group picture, and then there'll be lunch as yesterday in the room next door. All right. I'm very pleased that we have Anatoly Jingusto up here to serve as the moderator for this panel. Jing is actually an IMTFI alum. He's a former fellow and has 10 years of experience on a bunch of projects having to do with financial inclusion, rural development, and emerging markets in the Philippines, Indonesia, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. He's now with Mercy Corps, and I'm just going to turn it over to you to get going on G2P and GMP government payments and publics. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, so just to frame this session, as Bill mentioned, 2 years ago, I was actually also up here. IMTFI supported the research on electronic social cash transfers, which I did together with a former colleague of mine. And I remember quite vividly that I concluded our presentation with the thought that applying technology and innovation in government payments is like learning to dance a signature move. So I don't know if you still recall the Gangnam style. So yeah, so something best done and more fun when you are not alone. And talking about not being alone, I think if you have the government with you, I would say that it's really the best companion around. To be honest with you, I still have that lingering question until now. And just to clarify, the question is not about whether central bankers or government agency officers will learn how to dance hip-hop moves. But it's really about what experiments in innovation have governments done so far around payment systems to maximize its potential to become a vehicle for extending financial inclusion. And so for this reason, I am quite excited to introduce our panelists for this session and hear their findings of latest research. And you be the judge whether they can be considered feel-good stories for us. For our first presenter, we will hear Howard Togome from Benda Associates Limited. He'll talk about the experience for water bill payments in Uganda. Our second set of presenters will be Carlos Chiapa from El Colegio de Mexico, and Sylvia Prina from Case Western Reserve University, who will talk about the conditional cash transfers around savings accounts for Mexico. And then our last group of presenters include Javier Felix from RINAFIPSE and Monica Pozo of St. Lades, and they'll talk about the payment systems in Ecuador. So with that, Howard, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Jing, just call me Jing.
Jing, and thank you all of you. I'm glad that I'm actually presenting to this audience. First of all, it is my pleasure having been a fellow, a recipient of this scholarship, and I look forward to put it to the best for as long as I can. My name is Howard. We are 3 researchers. I am a leader of this study, but not necessarily the most knowledgeable. So this order is just by chance. I could have been here or this one been there. The 2 Justins are not with me because of other issues. One of them actually is big. As a woman, you know what I mean. And the other missed by a nickel. He was not given a visa. So I happen to be here as a loner, but I'm glad that they will be able to support me when it comes to question answering, especially by email. So my study, or our study, is actually on physical and electronic payment interface and how it is influencing consumer choice and the informal practices. So we used the National Water and Storage Corporation as a case study. If you'll allow, let me proceed. Wow. Whenever I get a chance, because I work for this company and I love it. Actually, it is, I'm one of the founders of the company. It is 10 years. I normally talk about it, and as I'm not trying to acclimatize this audience, I prefer relaxing on what I know best. So it is this company first. This company is a business consultancy, and we do research, specifically economic and social research. Soon we shall open other types of research with collaboration, of course. Then we also do business startups and agribusiness. Why I present this slide is because we actually use research to do better in these projects, agribusiness and business startups. For more information about this, you could ask me after the presentation or just visit www.bendassociates.com. Otherwise, I proceed to the presentation for the day. And this is the outline. Of course, there could be some modifications if you wish, but this is the basic outline. For many of you who have not been in this continent, this is Uganda, this red little country. And it's amazing. We are more happy than our neighbors, according to the happiness index. So if you don't see a Ugandan smiling, he's not average. So, I think I've missed something. Okay. But nevertheless, we have a lot of technologies and innovations in the line of money and money-related practices. And numbers show that banks have increased, especially their presence to the community. Even when this graph begins 2004, but it actually, this growth, as you can see, is from the 90s. And has been going up. So these are like access points to people to access banks. We have ATMs, and these are branches, especially commercial banks. We have not, I did not include the SACCOs and the microfinance institutions, but if I included, then things would be much better. So don't worry, Uganda is okay when it comes to this. But here is the challenge. The distribution and the presence. By 2003, this is Bank of Uganda. It reports 41% of our districts didn't have access to a bank or bank services. And that is quite appalling. Then we have growth in mobile money technology. I initially had wanted to dwell a lot on what is mobile money, but most presenters have talked about mobile money. And let me tell you, Uganda is like any other country. Mobile money is growing. Whether we like it or we don't like it, it is growing anyway. And the numbers of registered users has increased from somewhere back 2008 to 2014. I don't normally like using dailies, these papers, but this was too attractive information that the daily called Monitor in Uganda reported 17 million people having registered for mobile money. If I was in the Ugandan audience, they would say, hallelujah. Why is mobile money of any interest anyway? And why is it amazing? It is the distribution. You saw the banks have a problem, but mobile money distribution is actually, I think it is fair. And I would say people are accessing it as far as I'm concerned and as far as our analysis are concerned. For those of you who are looking at this as being concentrated around here and sparse around here, this is the demographic of Uganda. That is how Ugandan population is distributed. You have more people around this region, like you see there, and you have less around that region, like you see there. In Uganda, when you come, you look for Karamojongs. They occupy a lot of space around here, and yet they are not very many. So I'm sure these, okay, I can't use sure, but I think these mobile centers are enough for a few population that is here. So to me, I would say, yeah, that distribution is fair. Then let's talk about the study, the case study that the case that I used for this study. We looked at National Water and Storage Corporation. It is a government establishment established in 1972. Its basic services are water and sewerage services. I was perusing through such corporations. It is almost the same bit in Kenya or Tanzania. I don't know if I could be corrected. Currently, it is serving over 3 million people, and they are in 38 districts, but Uganda has over 100 districts. So these are the centers, water centers, and this map is going to actually change. There's going to be more concentration of these service centers if they implement their strategic plan as they have it on paper. At this corporation, National Water and Storage Corporation, they have embraced innovations, especially in payment systems, and it is not thanks to them, it is thanks to the innovations themselves. But I also credit them that actually adjusted their systems to take on these innovations. So we have these payment systems and innovations. We conceptualize the payment systems generally using this case to guide our analysis. So I'm an economist, I forgot to tell you. I know an economic being is never satisfied. They will always get money. Even when they don't have what to buy, they would rather put it to the bank. And when they are comfortably putting it in the bank, they say, no, 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 let's get it back. So that is common and normal. So people traditionally keep money at the bank. I use it traditional because, as you can see, I'm not very aged to have lived these commodity for commodity exchanges. So this is the tradition I found, that people keep some money in the bank and they also withdraw it. So just take this for depositing and withdrawing. I'm trying to understand, to use this to understand my study. This is what has been happening in a traditional arrangement. If you want to see these traditional arrangements, you have to go deep back in the villages. These are still happening a lot, but I also still practice it, where I use cash to buy goods and services. I think all of you do. Then there are some innovations between bank to use a bank channel to get services. And whatever we are adding is adding payment options, if you realize. I don't mind, or I should have actually put the years when ATMs were introduced, what, but that is not for this study. Let's go on. So we have also had more innovations that are using cash, but not necessarily going to the bank. And these innovations notably include mobile money. That is more basic. And these payware kiosks are in between there. They almost use the same technique. Of interest, actually, is this. There is a lot of movements here. You find people have cash. They use it to buy goods and services. Others have to first take it to the bank. Others have to pick it. Others pick it from mobile money, make it cash. And we are wondering, why do they do this? Why do people behave like this? Because in our daily experiences, that is what is happening. So this is the problem. Finding out why people do that. What drives people to behave like this? And when they do that, are there any changes, especially, Africa, especially in our countries, corruption is high. So are there any chances that this scourge of corruption or malpractices or these fraudulent practices are changing shape? So my problem, or the research problem, I will use my because I'm alone, otherwise I would be having two queens around here. We have a range of payment methods. People continue using these methods, and we say they are cash and electronic methods. So can we find out, or we are trying to understand, why do people actually continue using all? And the simple question is, why do they anyway use any of them? That is for analysis purposes. And when they use, especially these new payment methods, are there chances that they reduce the fraudulent practices? So our objectives are as presented, but they are just led by the question, and I've explained them in the conceptual framework. So that is what we are trying to find out, and these questions guide us to get that objective. The methods. We have done a survey in these 4 districts marked with those stars, and the characteristics are Kampala is the capital city, most urban and the highest developed in the nation, and I live in that place. So we have Mukono, a bit urbanized, Mpiji semi-urban, and Luero rural. So we did user interviews, asking questions. My respondents said we should not just publish their pictures anyhow. So we had to edit a bit of this, but if we could expand these pictures, they are saying something. That's how we did it. We had a random selection of clients for the corporation. We have interviewed 200, and once they enter in the analysis, the 30 we have to go back, and there's some missing information. We have enough time, we shall go back and talk to them, and we fill the gaps. And this exercise is still ongoing. We had people we think have information that can guide our study, and we talked to them. And these are workers at the corporation, especially those who have been there for some time. Age is wealth. Then we also had the bank managers. They are handling on everyday basis these payment methods. And there are some other researchers or scholars who have done some work related to this, what we are doing. We did some document review, especially reports and publications at the corporation. We read some articles like the ones I've been quoting, and used some research output, scholars' output, like published and unpublished work, blogs, and so on. So, preliminary results. And these just come from the descriptive because we haven't done the logistic analysis yet. Result 1, we get it from the survey, to the surveyed users. And this is how they perform. We asked people, we wanted to know if they know these payment methods as a way they could use to settle water bills. This is mobile money, those are bank transfers, that is cash deposited at the bank. This is cash, paying at cash offices. And these were the responses. Then we further asked them if they actually used it in the last 6 months. And this is how they responded. Interesting, people know mobile money, that they can use it a lot, but they find themselves using a lot of cash deposits. One would wonder, why would this happen? It is common because we are actually working in urbanized areas. Water in Uganda is sold basically mostly to urban centers. So we asked people why, or the reason, if there's any reason you chose to use a certain payment method. And these were the responses. This is 41% of 170, but actually 60% of the users. So if I just deleted this, did not use, this will come 60, and surprisingly, this one will also come close to 60. So people use a payment method if they presume it to be fast, safe, near to them. I'm just picking absolute highs. Near to them, if it is easy, and if it is convenient. Easy and convenient are almost time, at the actual time. And surprisingly, they don't know if it is cheap or not. Yeah, so from the expert interviews, yes, e-payment methods can reduce corruption. The users are now exposed to modern malpractices, and that is, these are what the experts said. Then from the document reviews, we can say 2013, mobile payments increased, and water bills now are paid anywhere, anytime. Our limitations, actually, the study is done in urban centers, yet we want to do it, to reflect what is happening in the whole country. Then these informal practices, they are not documented. The analysis is rather hard or not very possible. But we shall use the experts and our own experiences. The conclusion. Yeah, it is too early to draw conclusions. But there are signs that the research will answer the questions. And your suggestions that when I stop talking, you will tell me through questions and so on, clarifications, will really enrich the work. That is what is. My mom would harass me for not saying thank you. So thank you very much. Okay, but I have what to do more. Anyway, so we are still doing collection, and we shall have a report ready by around May. Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Sylvia, you're the one.
Well, I'm very honored to be here, presenting a work joint with Carlos Chiapa, who's here, and Manuel Angelucci at the University of Michigan. The title of the project is Delivering Conditional Cash Transfer via Savings Accounts, Default and Mental Accounting Mechanism, which is what we try to, what we want to explore, in this project. So we all know that inclusion to the financial system might help poor people to actually escape poverty. Nevertheless, if we look at current data on financial inclusion, formal financial inclusion, we see that most of people that are poor in developing countries are not included in the formal financial system, and they end up using imperfect subsidies when they want to save. Nevertheless, recent studies that have given access to formal savings accounts to people in developing countries have shown that there is untapped demand for formal savings devices, and that the access and the use of these formal savings accounts actually has pretty powerful positive welfare effects for both entrepreneurs as well as households. Okay, so in our project, we consider one social protection program, which is called Oportunidades, now the name changed into Prospera in Mexico. And there have been many other programs, especially in Latin America, social protection programs that have actually started depositing the transfers that they give to households that are below a certain poverty line via savings accounts, so no longer in cash. If we consider the case of Mexico, since January 2012, all beneficiaries of this conditional cash transfer program, Oportunidades, now Prospera, actually receive their transfer in a savings account that is provided by this government bank called Bansevim. So what we can say is that most of the poor Mexican households have actually like been granted access to the formal financial system. Nevertheless, what we might wonder is, well, now that all these households, all these 6 million households have access to a savings account, does it mean that they are actually like financially included? Well, if we look at the definition that the OECD gives like about financial inclusion, having simply like a savings account doesn't appear like to be enough. According to this definition, like inclusion into the formal financial system is not only given by access to formal financial services, but also the use of them, appropriate regulation to protect the customers, and financial education that allows users to actually be able to properly use the account. So what we can say is that for this target population that we'll consider like in our project, as well as for all poor households that are included throughout the world in conditional cash transfer program that have now started transferring that payment system from cash to electronic delivery into savings account, really like being banked is only like a necessary condition, is not a sufficient condition for being financially included. So in our case, considering like our population, if we look at data, and we have looked at data from when they started like a pilot in which they started including some households to receive like transfers using a savings account, using like electronic delivery, these households like mostly like withdrew their funds at once. This was a first result in with the pilot of 2009. If we look at another wave of data from 2012, we find a very similar result. So 6 months after scaling up at the national level this new payment system, most households are still like withdrawing at once like their conditional cash transfer. And baseline data from our own experiment, which was conducted in May 2014, actually shows that still like 81% of beneficiaries in our sample actually like still withdraw their transfer at once. Nevertheless, if we look at like our beneficiary, we can say that despite the fact that they withdraw their transfer at once, that doesn't mean that they don't save. Actually, like 58% do save. And if we look at whether they save in formal versus informal financial institution, what we can say is that about 38% like save in formal institutions. Surprisingly, not these entire like 38% actually like save in the bank in which like they actually receive the transfers, but only 30% save in Bansefi, which is the bank that provides the account in which they receive the conditional cash transfer. And the vast majority, 79%, actually like saves in informal financial institution. And if we look at the percentage that only saves in an informal financial institution, we can actually see that 62% of this population actually only saves in formal financial institutions, in informal financial institutions. So there seems to be a bit of a problem on the demand side, and our baseline survey actually like tried to understand what were like these problems, which I'm going to show you in the next slides. So the first thing that we can see, like by looking at our data from May 2014, is that a vast majority, like 42% of like our beneficiaries actually say that they don't save because they don't have like enough money to save, which somewhat like makes sense if we think that they are conditional cash transfer recipients because they are below the poverty level. Nevertheless, plenty of research actually like does show that even if you are poor, you still do save to smooth consumption and for various other reasons. 43% were told either by the institution that gives them the conditional cash transfer, or by the banking institution, or by like somebody in their environment that they actually needed to withdraw at once like the entire transfer. So this is like our first hint suggesting that there might be a little bit of like misinformation or disinformation in here. 11% withdraw everything because they fear that if they start saving, they will no longer like satisfy their status of being like below the poverty line, and therefore they might get kicked out of the program, which is not at all true. And then some people, 11%, like believe that given that the account in which the transfer is deposited is an account that is provided by the government, if they don't withdraw the entire amount of money, the amount of money that remains in the account is going to be actually like taken away by the government. So there is a bit of misinformation about understanding like that the account is actually theirs and is not of the government. And then there are many other reasons, but the other important reason is some lack of trust in the banking system. So if we keep focusing on this like demand issue, we see that misinformation or like low financial literacy actually like do play like a pretty large role in suggesting why like demand is so low. Only 51% of the recipients know that they actually like can save in the account that they have been provided with. Although they mostly like make withdrawals, they don't even know what's the cost associated with making a withdrawal. And that's probably because they can withdraw money from different institutions, and there are like different charges depending on the ATM of the bank from which they withdraw from. But there is a lot of misinformation associated with that as well. 83% doesn't even know how to make a deposit, or doesn't even know like where to go and what to do if they would want to make like a deposit into their savings account. And finally, 88% doesn't know that due to Mexican laws, actually like what's deposited in any savings account is actually like protected by the federal government, and so it's safe. Nevertheless, we can say that on the positive side, like 62% of the sample actually like does believe that there is an advantage in saving like in a formal savings account. So even if there might be like plenty of misinformation, and even if there might be like a little bit of lack of trust, still they do believe that most probably like formal savings accounts are safer than informals are. And then regarding like low financial literacy, we ask like a set of standard questions that have been used like even in the US and developed country like to try to measure the level of financial literacy of like different populations. And so the first question is about calculating the 10% of 1,250 pesos, which is like roughly the amount of the average conditional cash transfer. What we can see is only like 30% actually know how to calculate the 10%. If we look at calculating, like understanding like interest rate, or an interest rate of like 2% like monthly on $100 will cause you to have like to pay more than $100, less than $100 like in 3 months, and only 43% of the sample actually answers to this correctly. And regarding inflation, people seem to be like better informed, meaning that only like 25% of the sample actually doesn't know how to answer this question correctly. So overall, like from here, we can say that there is a bit of misinformation, definitely, and there is like low financial literacy, and both misinformation and low financial literacy might actually like play a role in the low usage of like this savings account. Now, considering like our intervention, what we wanted to do, we've been delayed a little bit, I'll explain like why later, is to test the effect of like 2 different tools that have shown in different experiments, especially like in developed country, to be very effective at increasing savings. One is mental accounting. We'll explain like in a little bit what that is. And then the other one are default mechanisms. So both mental accounting and default has proven to be like quite effective in raising savings, mostly in developed country. And what we can say is that when we consider mental accounting and default in the formal financial system, these mechanisms have not been available like to poor households in developing countries or in developing countries in general. And the reason for it is that most people either don't have a savings account or don't have a stable job that would allow them to have like a direct deposit feature into their savings account. So if we consider conditional cash transfer, the fact that poor households are now transfer this amount of money like regularly and with a direct deposit feature in their account actually like give us a chance of testing this mechanism with poor population in developing countries and see whether they would actually work as well as they've been shown to work in developed countries and for relatively better off populations. So what do we want to do like in our project? We want to estimate like rigorously using like a randomized control trial the effect of mental accounting, specifically of providing people with an account that is denominated for emergencies. Why do we consider an account that is denominated for emergency? Well, because we know that making something salient to people might have like a larger effect, and in particular like emergencies is something that is salient for at least 70% of this population, according to our data, and therefore, if I tell you that you should save like for emergency, using like an account that is denominated for emergency, this should have a larger impact than simply providing you an account that is not labeled. And then having an account that is denominated for emergency, for which like you have a default feature. So by default, you don't have to remember to actually save in this account, but by default, every time that you receive your conditional cash transfer, 10% of that conditional cash transfer is transferred directly into this account for emergencies. And so what we want to see is the effect of the account labeled for emergency and the account labeled for emergency plus the default feature on several characteristics. First of all, the first order question is what's the effect on savings in these bank accounts? Then on overall household savings, because there could be like some crowding out from other savings devices into the account. And then the ability of households to actually being able like to cope with emergencies. And finally on investments, which could be actually investments in business or investment in health and education, etc. So as I mentioned earlier, our methodology uses like a randomized control trial, and so we will randomly allocate a beneficiary that belongs like to different localities that have already been selected into a control group, which is somewhat like the status quo, and into a treatment one, which will be provided with an account labeled for emergency, and into another treatment, which is going to be provided with the account labeled for emergency plus like this default deposit feature. And so one thing to be said is that given the level of misinformation and low financial literacy that we saw in our sample, one thing that is going to be provided to everybody in the control group, in the first treatment and in the second treatment, is going to be a special education workshop in which a lot of these misinformation that we saw is actually going to be clarified. And most importantly, we have worked on designing like booklets. I'll show you just like the front page of these booklets in the next slides. And these booklets actually like allowed households like to calculate the 10% of their transfer, to keep track of the amount that is in their account, tells them that the amount that is in their account is actually like protected by the government, that the account is theirs, tells them about like the cost of making withdrawals and making deposits at different institutions. So the idea is to actually like being able like to somewhat take away for all of these people like some of the misinformation and lack of trust and financial literacy issues, so that the effects are actually like only coming out from providing you with an additional account and providing you with a deposit feature. So this is our control group. The control group is going to be given just a basic booklet. The debit card that is depicted there is the card that they originally like received, and it says in here like the little booklet of like my savings, to underline that the savings that are in the account are actually theirs. Then we have a treatment one. The treatment one has the original account, which is represented by the gray booklets and the gray debit card, sorry, and then a new account that is an account labeled like for emergency, which has a debit card that is also labeled for emergency. And so the idea is that the debit card are going to have like a sticker on top that is going to allow beneficiary to distinguish between the general account and the account for emergencies. And then we have our second treatment, which will be still given like the two booklets, because they will be given like they have the debit card that they had from the original account. They are open an account for emergencies, and then on top of that, they will receive like the default feature, like the ability to have 10% of the transfer, like transfer directly into their account for emergencies. So these are our three groups, and so the idea is that a comparison between savings or any other like outcome variable in the control group versus the two treatment groups is going to enable us to detect whether there are like any effect from mental accounting, from labeling an account, for giving you an account that is labeled for emergencies. And then a comparison instead between the two treatment allow us like to see the effect of the default mechanism of like transferring money by default, so that you don't actually have to go to the bank, you don't have to remember, and so somewhat like a lot of additional burden is somewhat taken away from you. And so where do we stand? So we have done, as I mentioned earlier, like a baseline data collection in May 2013. The intervention ideally was supposed to start like right after the baseline survey. Nevertheless, we have been delayed, and the fault is not really like on the researcher side, but it's mostly on the fact that Mexico went through lots of like political changes. So the partner institution that we work with, which is the bank Bansefi, has had like several political changes in the people that are like at the top. The president of Mexico is now somewhat like redesigning this conditional cash transfer program to somewhat like add additional features to the program. One sign of it is that the name actually changed from Oportunidade to Prospera, and then there is like a new financial like inclusion strategy. And in all this, essentially like our project has kept like being delayed. So a date actually for the start of the project hasn't been set yet, unfortunately. So what can we say in terms of what we expect and in terms of like results like from our project? Well, we know very little about what are the results between the inclusion of conditional cash transfer program and savings accounts, so electronic transfers directly into savings accounts. So our study will allow us like to look into this further. And then the results that we'll get from the study in terms of like the effect of mental accounting as well as like default mechanism will allow us to essentially like give pretty strong like policy implication in terms of like how is it that we can actually like maximize and increase the benefits associated with the union of conditional cash transfer and savings accounts. And in particular, like if our study demonstrates that there are like pluses associated with providing an additional account or associated with this default feature, scaling it up is going to be relatively easy and cost effective, and replication shouldn't be something that is like particularly difficult, given that many other countries have similar like conditional cash transfer program, and many other countries are actually moving into depositing electronically these transfers. So that's where we stand at the moment. We hope to be able like to give you an update on the project moving like pretty soon. Thank you.
Hello, good morning to everyone. My name is Javier, and my colleague is Monica. We're here to present the new financial architecture of Ecuador. Ecuador right now is restructuring its domestic financial architecture through legal reforms, through new public policies, and through a transformation of its national payment system. Well, the study deepens in the social and political context of the legal and regulatory structure of the new financial architecture. The focus mainly is about the design and the implementation of a mobile payment system that is administered by the Central Bank of Ecuador. The idea is to increase the diversity in the payment forms in the country, and also to improve the inclusion, the financial inclusion of the marginal sectors. For this study, there are a lot of interviews were made to the public authorities that were designing the project a few years ago, and the authorities that are implementing the project right now. The project started to be designed like in between 2009 and 2010. 4 years have passed since that, and a lot of political changes have been made to the project. So the study will trace all the history of this project, and will map out the legal, the economic, and the social cultural factors that affect the project. Well, first, I will start giving like a brief summary of what happened in Ecuador a few years ago. We had a big financial crisis in 1999 that affected, well, in that time economically, it had like a big economic impact, but socially it left like a lot of issues between currency and the people. Well, during that time, we had like a big devaluation of our currency. We lost about 200% of the value in a very short period of time. Also, there was a lot of money withdrawal from the banks. So a lot of banks went bankruptcy, and we had high levels of inflation. This caused that the former president decided to dollarize the economy. But in sort of way, the economy was already being dollarized, because we use dollars, we have dollars in our accounts, everybody accepted dollars, but they decided to make it like official. During that time, the highest bill that we had, it was like 50,000 sucres, which with the official change was converted in $2. Well, since the dollarization, a lot of like the macroeconomic rates have been stabilized, and we showed a little growth in our economy. Especially, we can see that inflation that in 2000 was about 95%, went like to an average of 3 to 4% in 3 years. Okay. Ecuador has suffered like a lot of political instability from 1996 to 2006. We had 8 presidents in a short period of time. And after that, Rafael Correa was elected, and he created like a new constitution for Ecuador. This new constitution is based on what we call buen vivir, which is well-being, which is like an indigenous principle of living in harmony between humans and with nature. That's the main principle of the new constitution. Also, in this new constitution, a new economic system is established in Ecuador. It's the social and solidarity economy. This new sector has priority for public policies. The idea behind Rafael Correa's government, which is called Revolución Ciudadana, that is Citizens' Revolution, is based on the 21st century socialism that is around Latin America since a while. So Ecuador took a leading position in the new financial architecture at a regional level. This new financial architecture is based on three milestones, which are the Banco del Sur, which is the South Bank, the Fondo del Sur, which is the South Fund, and the Sucre, which is like a regional compensation system between central banks. So in a domestic level, the new financial architecture is based on giving a solution to the neoliberal financial structure established that was based on the deregulation of the financial markets and the free movement of capital abroad. The government tried to re-centralize all the state power and to reclaim all the governance and regulation. Also, it included the new popular or social and solidarity sector inside the financial sector. Well, after the international financial crisis in 2008 and in 2009, the government was concerned about having a crisis inside Ecuador that could affect the dollarization. So they decided to analyze new forms of payment. Among them, there was this huge movement around the world of mobile payments, and they studied that for Ecuador. They saw that in Ecuador, we had a lot of population that is unbanked. There was around like 70% of people that doesn't have any bank account. So they also saw that there was like an increased permeation of the cell phone coverage, which potentiates a lot of an implementation of a national scale project. In Ecuador, right now we have like mobile penetration of 111%. We have almost 18 million mobile lines, and we are 15 million people. We have 3 cell phone companies. 2 of them are private, and 1 of them is public. So they decided to create a public mobile money system, which is a really groundbreaking idea that has never been done before in the world. The idea is to set like a new means of payment based on mobile phones. Well, the key actors of this project will be, of course, the Central Bank of Ecuador, but also a lot of regulatory institutions. All of them are public institutions related to financial inclusion, to social and economic inclusion as well. There has been a lot of delays since the design of the project started in 2009 and 2010, because a lot of political changes were made inside the central bank. The new authorities that entered in 2012, they changed all the idea of the project. They made that the central bank changed their position to being just like a regulatory institution, just controlling the private initiatives. But before that, the team that designed the project created a regulation that said that any other private initiative was forbidden. The central bank was the only institution allowed to issue money, in this case, mobile money. It was part of also of a broader agenda of financial inclusion around the whole country. The idea is to connect all the financial institutions from all over the country to the national payment systems. This included the community banks or credit and savings, small credit and savings cooperatives that didn't have enough technology to connect to the central bank. So they helped them creating a network of networks. So they directly or indirectly they could connect to the central bank. The idea is to shorten times and costs for them. Well, here some of the key actors are the mobile phone companies. As I told you, there are 3 mobile companies in Ecuador. The central bank has already signed agreements with all of them. Right now, they're in a pilot phase that will end actually tomorrow. So the central bank will have results to see how the technological issues are being done right now. Another important actor are the micro agents. These are the agents in charge of cashing in and out. And also the transactional centers are the customer service points that they have. Well, the project of the central bank is not like any other project in the world because it's not based on any private company, any mobile operator or any private financial institution. It's based on the Central Bank of Ecuador. Mobile money becomes a state liability. And also mobile money becomes a legal tender in Ecuador. So everyone must accept mobile money because it's like any other dollar. Here, the central bank discussed about a really particular money theory, which is that money should be a public good. They wanted to avoid the privatization of money because they criticized a lot different kind of experiences where the private companies, they tend to influence on the consumption of the users of the system. They can also, because of the big market share that they have, parallel to the design of the project in the central bank, one of the biggest banks in Ecuador and the largest mobile phone company created an agreement to implement a project of mobile money. And also the second largest bank and the second largest mobile phone company with an important credit card created their own money as well. So the central bank decided to stop these initiatives so they can start their own project, because it was, for them, it was really risky to have all these powerful companies in charge of issuing money in Ecuador. On the contrary, the central bank saw that there could be a lot of public benefits by creating a mobile money system that is public, especially regarding financial inclusion. So a lot of controversy was created around this project. especially because in Ecuador, as in many other parts of the world, banks have a lot of connections with media. So the media started to criticize a lot the project, saying that it could bypass the dollarization, that they were going to issue money, even though it's a central bank. But the central bank created like a regulation to kind of stop this criticism, saying that all the mobile money will be 100% backed in the central bank. Well, these are all the use cases that mobile money could have. As I told you, there's the cash in and cash out opportunities. People won't have to pay anything to do that. The only cost that the project has, that the transaction has, are for the transfers. But the people ordering the transfer is the one that pays. But the costs are really, really cheap. They go from 1 cent to 10 cents, depending on the amount of the transaction. And also transferring money from the mobile money platform to the financial system will cost between 5 to 15 cents. Opening an account, the maintenance of that account, or consulting your balances won't have any charges. Well, the central bank has set all the legal requirements, the operational and administrative requirements to implement the project. As I told you, they're in a pilot phase, so they don't have any results yet. But the project will start officially by the end of this month of December. One of the things, as I told you, is that the mobile money will be 100% backed, and also the bank established limits for the system. They said that every person can have only 3 accounts. Like with my ID, I can only have 3 different accounts in the mobile platform, and with a limit of $2,000 per month. These limits vary for a legal person. It depends on the size of the business, and it will be approved through the central bank. Mobile money will be always connected with the national payment system, so it could move from the mobile platform to the financial system at any time. Well, these are some of the perspectives from the different actors about the project. Especially for the government and the central bank, it's like a really a strategy of monetary policy, so they can speed up the circulation of money especially between rural areas, and they want to recirculate the money within their rural areas, avoiding it to go to urban areas and then to speculative markets. Another important thing for them is the financial inclusion that should be promoted from any public institution because of the new constitution of Ecuador. Also for mobile companies, it's like a new line of business for them. The scope of the central bank is to reach all the economic active population, which in Ecuador could be around 7 million people. And they have to adapt their networks so they can work within the system. Also for microagents, it could be a new line of business as well. They could save a lot of money because of the cost that implies handling cash. And also for the final users, it adds speed to their transactions. It reduces their transaction costs. Well, finally, as a conclusion, this is a really cutting-edge proposal from the central bank, but it's still unknown how it could be, how it could have a bigger impact than private initiatives. It's still unknown how Ecuadorians will respond to the system, based on the fact that Ecuadorians have like a big trauma caused by the financial crisis of 1999. They don't want to have an own national currency because of the stability that dollar gave to the Ecuadorian economy. So that will be a part that the central bank that needs to work in, especially because money as a social agreement is based on trust. So, like as a recommendation, it could be that rules of any system should be constructed transparently and with democratic responsibility. So this idea from the central bank could change the world view of mobile money, but still unknown. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 30 minutes for questions.
My name is Negia Santwa from the University for Development Studies in Tamale in Ghana. Thank you very much, all the three of you, for such illuminating presentations. I have just a few comments and a question to my brother from Uganda. Two questions. Did you find that those who are registered for mobile money were distributed across all the districts, or were they concentrated in the districts that have no access to formal banks? Do we know that? You drew some conclusion about those who knew the existence of mobile money and those who actually use the service. Unless you provide some more findings, you might not be able to draw the conclusion that you drew, that even though many of them know about the mobile money service, they actually use cash deposits. That may not be true. And then I think the second presentation or so, there was a slide that you said keeping your money under your bed when inflation is very high, when you keep money under your bed, definitely to lose value. Yeah, that is true, but if you're not operating a savings account, if you're operating a current account, or you put your money in your current account, and there's inflation, it will also lose value. So I was just thinking that if we are providing information to people to improve their access to financial inclusion services, maybe the information should be comprehensive. Then I like the aspect of teaching people how to make simple calculations. Very, very important. How about people who cannot read and write? Are you able to also teach them in some way how to make their calculations? That would be very interesting, because it might be useful directly to us and the work that we want to do in Ghana. For now, that's okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I could respond. I will say, I will answer the last question first. It is on if it is a conclusion or a finding. I have not concluded yet. I'm only saying my descriptive analysis shows that people know more of mobile money as a payment system. But when we do ask a question if they used it, the less actually used it. So we are going to further investigate on how true it is, and that will be a statistical analysis. If I answered that, I prefer, at least you, is that answered?
Well, that's what I wanted you to have said, but that's not what you said. So that's okay.
But I've answered.
Yes.
Thank you. Then the distribution of mobile money versus banks. Let's say this. We are economic agents, and the players, the actors themselves are also economic agents. These are not development projects. Even mobile money centers still look for the demand for it. So what you will find in most cases is where there is a bank. Of course, they are urbanized people, and the people have money. That's where the mobile money is coming. But the better for the mobile money is they go even in village centers. You get it? Village centers. Places where a bank otherwise wouldn't be there, you'll find their mobile money agent. So it is true that where there are banks, there are more mobile money agents, but there are also places where there are no banks and there are mobile money agents. So I think they take better services to rural people. Have I answered that also? Okay, thank you.
And with respect to how to teach people that don't know how to write and read to do computations, that's a real challenge. So for example, so our population, so they are quite poor, and the percentage of the population that says that they do not know how to make computations is about 38%. So what we are proposing to do is to do something super graphical. So we just write down the number. They can identify the different digits, and all we tell them to compute the 10% is that, look, here's the decimal point. All you have to do is to move it one figure to the left, and then the figure that remains is the 10% of your transfer. Again, so this is what we are proposing. We still have to try it on the field, but it's a real challenge. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Joshua Green. I'm with CSS Mexico Occidente. First, thank you to IMTFI for this wonderful event. Thank you to the presenters for your wonderful presentations. A little question about opportunity. So a few years ago, before there was the electronic transfer, literally hundreds of thousands of women would go to a public place and collect cash. It was a security problem. It was a organizational challenge, and it was a big inconvenience because they couldn't bring their children. They had to spend an entire day to get their money. With the electronic transfer, what we saw in Chiapas, at least witnessing when it was first being rolled out, and that was another IMTFI project, was that the women, the indigenous women especially, specifically in communities, did not feel comfortable or were not allowed, we're not sure, but going alone to withdraw the money. So the men would go with them, or the men would go to withdraw the money. And so I'm wondering, do you think that influences how the money is withdrawn or the habits, or is that still an issue? Is that an isolated event that we witnessed, or just your response?
So again, one of the Chiapas is not one of the states in our sample. Our sample is more in the central part of Mexico, and there we conducted some focus groups to understand how the women were dealing with the bank now that they have the debit card. And usually it is the beneficiary woman, the one that goes in these states to withdraw the money. in some instances that they do not feel comfortable doing that, then they ask the daughter or the son to do it. We never heard of them asking the husband to do it. But again, so I don't know if in Chiapas things are different.
Okay, thank you as well for all the very interesting presentations. My name is Magdalena Villarreal, also from Mexico. And also for Carlos and Silvia, I found it very interesting. I wonder, we also work with mental calculations. This is also a very important part of our study, how people calculate the risk and how they measure it and why they consider. And I take myself as a case study, and my pensions would be, because I work in a research center that is a government institution, they would go to IMTFI, the pension. And it is not misinformation that IMTFI has invested pensions in private projects that are very risky and that I am very suspicious of. So I don't know whether we should always think that people are malinformed. Maybe they hear rumors, maybe they have instincts, maybe they have, the way they calculate is important, but IMTFI is not necessarily the most, I mean, they also invest the money, and they are investing in a big touristic project with Goldman and Sachs in the west of Jalisco, for example, and so I don't know. I mean, I just think that we shouldn't jump to conclusions saying that it's malinformation. And the other thing is, I wonder whether there are different interests involved. For example, IMTFI would be interested that the people save, but other actors within the government would be interested that people use the cash transfer to consume, because that would generate, move the economy, the local economy, in a different way. So that would be convenient for the bottom of the pyramid to a kind of idea to start moving. So I wonder whether we could also think a little bit in those terms. And to Javier and Monica, I think I found it very, very interesting as well. And this idea of private and public money, I wonder whether you could say what the implications of it being private money for you would, what you think of private money implications would be. Thank you.
Okay, so regarding the first point and the fact that we might perceive like that some institutions are not as trustworthy as we want them to be. So like from our survey, it comes out that there is a lot of like misinformation and disinformation. There is also like 9% says that they don't trust the institution in which they work, and there are like also there was a latter column like bar like at the end that was saying like other concerns. And among these other concerns are problems about like being discriminated when they go to the bank branch, and all problems like associated with IMTFI's employee not essentially like being too keen towards serving like this population, although out of like the 7 million clients that they have, like 6 million are Oportunidades beneficiaries. So there can definitely be other concerns aside from misinformation, disinformation, and low financial literacy. Trust is an issue that I believe it's a lot more difficult like to address, and that we, while we could tackle like misinformation, disinformation, and financial literacy relatively easily like with the material that we provide, trust, the lack of trust arises like from different reasons, as you said. So it's first understanding those reasons. It's important like to know how to tackle it, and in this project, unfortunately, we are not like addressing that. And then regarding like there are definitely like different interests in involved, like associated with financial inclusion. So there could be, certainly like from Oportunidades, there is a big interest associated with people actually like properly understanding and using the accounts so that they can actually like benefit and not paying like a high cost. And also there is an interest from Oportunidades and the Ministry of Development of having these beneficiary actually like being able to save and smooth consumption better, because there have been issues of people like entering the program and essentially like never graduating, which is then a large cost for the government. There are also interests, as you mentioned, definitely like about consuming and especially like, but people are like consuming like more of financial products, especially like understanding how is it that they can withdraw the money at a point of sale without having to pay a fee, etc. So there is definitely like consumption of the money that they receive into the economy that hasn't changed with respect to when payments were in cash. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no. And so this is just like an anecdote. So one of some of the problems that we're having now with BANSEFI trying to start the intervention is that with this new financial inclusion initiative that the new program Prospera has, so the financial part is being operated by BANSEFI. And what they have designed for emergencies to help the families in case they have an emergency is to provide credit. So what they don't like about our strategy is that we are promoting savings for emergencies. And instead the bank wants to give credit for emergencies because they see much more room for business than with
Hello?
Okay, thanks for your question. For me, anyone who issues money earns power. So in Ecuador, especially, I see it like a dangerous situation to, for example, what was happening during like 4 years ago. The biggest bank in Ecuador, which is Banco del Pichincha, was allied with the biggest mobile company, which was Claro from the Slim group. So in Ecuador, we as a small country, we have a few groups of power. So giving these few groups this power to issue money for private interest. Banco de Pichincha is a private bank, so their final goal is to earn money for them, same as Claro. It was really, really dangerous, especially because we had like a traumatic experience during 1999, where all the banks during that time had almost all the control of the monetary policy in Ecuador. The Junta Bancaria, it's called, the bank like board. They kind of were in like above the president during that time. So what happened was that this financial crisis affected so bad that a lot of banks went bankruptcy. So this traumatic experience doesn't give like Ecuador like a big the perfect conditions to establish a private run money. So for me, this idea of making it public, and it has to be seen as a like a cutting edge proposal that could show all the world the big benefits of making it public.
Maybe we have room for 2 more questions.
Okay.
Then the one.
Hello? I'm on the mic already.
Oh.
Okay. I want to direct my question to the presenter from Ecuador. I want to share our experience in Nigeria because I'm very interested in the architecture you're presenting. In Nigeria, one of the reasons why the mobile banking financial services has not really advanced much is that there's a kind of conflict. I'm looking at the architecture now between the Central Bank of Nigeria as regulating monetary issues, and then the Nigerian Communication Commission regulating telecoms and services. As a result of that, even though we have a very high mobile penetration for other services, but when it comes to financial services, it's very, very low in terms of adoption. The Central Bank of Nigeria insists they will be in charge. Before that, the telecom industry, through their own regulatory system, is really been on the ground. So the central bank prefers a bank-led driven channel, and the banks can't do it without the telecom companies. For that reason, it's been very slow. The telecom companies have infrastructure. Now, in your own, and one of the reasons why central bank was insistent is to protect the consumers. We had experience before the telecom companies that came, the tariff, everything was so high. So the central bank wanted to protect the consumers, and that slowed down things. In your own case, from what I got from you, we had three major companies, is it not? You had three major companies. Yeah. And then at the point, the central bank had to intervene. My question is, before they intervened and after, how were the consumers protected? Is there a major difference in terms of consumer protection, in terms of particularly in cost arrangement and the rest? I hope
consumer protection about financial services? Yes. Or in general?
In general, particularly in respect to, because I'm trying to relate it to Nigerian situation, because one of the reasons why CBN insists is to protect the consumers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, as I told you, in Ecuador, we have a new constitution created to promote this social and solidarity economy, which is like a big part of the Ecuadorians' population. All of the public policies must promote the inclusion of them within the system. A whole legal reform was made to protect all this area of the economy. So the central bank changed a lot since then. They created like a different department inside the central bank, created for financial inclusion and for this social and solidarity economy. So they are giving the capabilities for all of these institutions, so they can be part of the whole financial system. They preparing them with knowledge and giving them technology. So in any moment they will be able to compete with bigger financial institutions. Exactly for the final consumers, there are different public institutions in charge of protecting them. But from the central bank, that's what they can do for their like from their scope.
I hope Jenny won't harass me, but I'd like to hear the words from the first, the guy in front.
Thank you. This goes to Carlos. Well, since it appears from your initial results that the fear that the government will take the balances, the remaining balances, and the fear that the beneficiaries may be removed from the list if they leave balances in their accounts. I mean, this too appears to be one of the key reasons that people withdraw the entire amount from their accounts. Wouldn't it be equally important to insist on awareness and education regarding, as long as the government's intention is to build this culture of saving, wouldn't it be equally important to create that awareness that the government will not take away the balances and it will not, remove them from the list? Besides the methods that you're coming up of default deductions and whatever, and mental accounting.
Yeah, no, we completely agree. That is super important, no? So, and in fact, so a treatment that it will go to the three groups, our three experimental groups, is exactly that, no? So we will give to each group, control, treatment 1 and treatment 2, this booklet where it is explained that the money is theirs, that the account is theirs, and we make a big effort trying to explain them how to keep track of their savings account so that if they go to the bank to make a deposit, they can write it down and know exactly how much money they have in the bank. They can go and ask for their balance, and the numbers must check. If they go to make just to check the balance and there is a cost, to teach them how to write that down so that they know exactly how much it costed and they know what's the end balance after checking after checking their balance. So that they know perfectly how much money they have there and they can check that actually so nobody is taking their money away, no? And if something is missing, it's because of a transaction that they must have been done. And if the number that they have differs from the number that the bank says that they have, that they can go and complain about it and have some evidence to discuss. Yeah, that's super important.
All right. I do apologize for everyone because I think I am seeing a lot of hands raised. But I think this is just the beginning. I mean, we have seen that some of the research presented haven't been completed yet. And I do encourage everyone, especially if you have burning questions, to approach the respective panelists. But just quickly to conclude the session, I think it bears noting that, I don't know if you noticed, but two of the presenters actually were somewhat influenced by politics. And I think that's something that we have to recognize, that the government indeed plays an important role as maybe a change agent, but there are also some inherent factors that can that can pull or push the influence for governments. And I think that the three studies that are represented here highlight the fact that while the government might have a macro perspective on things, research like these highlight that they need to be grounded. And when I say grounded, they have to also be mindful of the details, the finer details, like the agents, like consumer protection and education, and about really centering on the target beneficiaries, the target segments. And with that, please join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you.